All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody, to another Metabolic Mentor podcast, where we talk about hard-hitting health issues through the lens of amazing transformations. Today, I have an awesome guest with me, Sonia, and we're going to talk about an amazing topic, really a topic that touches all of us. That's actually not even amazing. It's pretty difficult, but it's amazing when you hear it in its full brevity and understand how it really stretches it up you and everyone that you may know. And we're going to talk about addiction and eating disorders, but we're going to tell it through your story because your story is so amazing. I can't get to it all, but just for a minute for the listeners and for the viewers, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, please click the subscribe, hit the notification bell. It really, really helps us every time we drop a new video. So Sonia, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep, my name is Sonia Spil and I am from Seattle, Washington. I have been a functional health coach for about 5 years and I have an amazing daughter. I'm just really excited to be here and share my story. It's definitely one that I know that other people are also experiencing. I'm happy to bring light to it.
Yeah. So if for anyone who's maybe a coach or anybody that's been in dieting for a while, you should check out Sonia. We'll drop in the description her information. She is a great resource for information. Like I said, her story, I cannot get to it all today. You would tune out after 2 hours of just madness, but we'll probably have her back. But she did come all the way from Seattle, right? And so hopefully we'll have you back for another one. But I really want to focus on being able to tell your journey and then stopping in this place of you've battled and overcome multiple different issues to then deal with one of the most undiagnosed but fastest growing health conditions in the United States when we talk about this metabolic disorder that we're going to get to.
Yeah.
And so through all these different battles, and I'd love for people to see that journey. So again, but you can see a lot of it on her page, and then also you have a podcast, right?
Yep, Unnamed and Untamed.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So first off, tell me a little bit about the origins of the story. Tell me about when things got hard or when things started to happen for you.
Yeah, so I think for me, a lot of it started to happen around like 12, 13, 14, kind of like going into puberty. My immediate family were very focused on dieting. So it was like very Atkins and low carb and like all this stuff. And so as I started to become aware of my body, I had almost like this ultra awareness of like what I thought I should be, mixed with parents who, really struggled with like overeating, like buffets, and always every holiday was circled around food. And so I started naturally becoming more trying to restrict and hold back. And then I started my freshman year in high school. And in Washington, stimulants and specifically like methamphetamine are very, very big. And so the story I had heard was that you don't eat, it makes you super skinny and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I grew up being like so into Kate Moss. So having this already like idea of what I thought life should look like and be like in my head. And I started using when I was 14, my freshman year.
So, okay. So let's come back to this because I think this is important. So do you think that the way that you were raised, was it, if we try to, there are always multiple components.
So
right?
much, yeah.
But, one, it can be from parents who are trying to be over restrictive and teach their children strict dieting early on that sends them in the wrong direction. Other parents have no control in the situation, let the kids do whatever, and they grow up in an unhealthy environment, so they seek like control or whatever. And I'm not so sure which one, again, you could debate which is worse, but a lot of times I find that what it is usually with diet, and I want to know if this is true with you at first, it's seeking control.
100%. We moved over 14 times before I even had started using drugs. And I'm talking about, Florida to California back. I mean, we've moved about 23 times, And I think that your life kind of feels like there's nothing you can control. And as a kid, I think that you already have that feeling. And then starting to gain weight at that age when you're starting to develop and having an environment where food is the main focus of everything, I naturally started seeking that dopamine rush from eating. It's like if you have a bad day, overeat and have cake, and then only on weekends and points and all this kind of skewed information that people are exposed to every single day.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when we look at the histories of any of my clients or I work with coaches across the country or other practitioners, and they're looking at trauma and they're right.
Yeah.
They're looking for a specific thing. And a lot of times when I talk to those clients or those people, they often cite a particular situation, whether they think it was like their mother told them that they look fat or whatever. And I think those absolutely have a lot to do with it. But a lot of times when we dissect it a little bit more, there was usually some other stressful situation going on with layers that it wasn't necessarily just because the mother said anything or because of the household. They felt so insecure and fearful for many reasons that they sought control and then found the first set of control in diet, because it's one of the things you could control, being that you live in someone else's house. I mean, there's not a lot of things you control. You're young.
Addiction is never one thing, right? We're looking for acceptance. We're looking for that rush. We're looking for, like we say, like belonging and to feel good and to feel a part of something. So it's like there's so many layers when it comes to addiction. It's not normally just one thing that leads us there.
Right. And so, so we're trying to control our diet pretty heavily. Then we find drugs, and particularly starting with methamphetamine. Right. And I'm sure that worked for a little while, actually.
Oh yeah. It was the first time I had like lost weight. I had never lost weight before. Any like diet that like we put on the fridge as a kid, it was like Atkins was very big then, and then South Beach in the Zone. Anything we put on the fridge, I never got because I couldn't count carbs in orange juice. I was like, I like orange juice. So I couldn't successfully lose weight until I started using drugs. And that's when that restrictive behavior came in. And I lost maybe 25 pounds. And I was like feeling myself.
That is so crucial what you're talking about, because people are going to hear the word methamphetamine and shut off like they can't.
I know.
They can't relate. But the reality of what you just said is you were more of an endo-meso body style, a little bit hefty, holding more weight. And then you couldn't lose weight very, very well until you found a stimulant. This is what the important thing I want people to understand, because this is most people's stories, particularly women.
Yeah.
They'll find a stimulant that makes them not eat.
Adderall, Ritalin, all of it.
Heavy caffeine, whatever.
Yeah.
And people want to separate it, but as a stress signal in the body, it's actually almost the same.
Yes.
When you look at the hormonal cascade.
Yes.
So people need to understand that even though we're talking about an illicit drug, there are plenty of legal drugs that will over time essentially do the same thing metabolically to you.
Through my addiction, through the almost 16 years of addiction, it was always prescription and prescription pharmaceuticals that took me back into heavy addiction. Whether it was Adderall leading me back to cocaine or pain pills or something, it was always a prescription.
So all of these different substances, you can give them different names, but at the end of the day, they're all heavily dopamine stimulated, right? Dopamine based.
Yep.
And to get a little bit more personal, when did you know it was a problem? Because that journey of thinking that something's helping you, right? And you have so much disillusionment, self-deception, right? That you create reasonable situations for why it's beneficial, despite the evidence of your life. Because this is me, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in a complicated household. I'll say that for now. And I had got OCD, diagnosed with OCD.
Yeah.
So I was battling that, and they should have just told me then that basically you're an addict in training. No one told me that was what's coming next, right? Because they didn't understand it at this time.
Yeah.
And then instantly it turned into other things, right?
Yes.
So that story of coming to learn about what's wrong with you while you're trying to look at yourself, that's why people don't diagnose themselves, because they can't see it.
Yeah.
Right. So for people who
are scared of things they can't see, right, in general.
And we're going to come back to this. This is an important moment. Here she's using at a young age methamphetamines for a significant period of time.
Yeah.
And still in her mind can't see what's wrong with that. And then people are going to look at you and go, well, that's obvious. Well, when we get to the rest of the story today about America, everyone's dealing with an addiction for the most part that they cannot see right now, including the person that's watching and listening to this right now. And they're gonna instantly think, no, not me. Not me. I don't got a problem, right? This chick's was using meth. I mean, that's not me. But I think it's important to point that out. And so in that coming of age story, when was the day you were like, oh shit, I can't stop?
So I had started using drugs intravenously, and I was using in my high school, and I remember one day just having almost an out of body experience and realizing that what was really going on, because you're just kind of in the moment. And I think when you realize that everyone's in math class right now and you're in the bathroom trying to use drugs like that, it's wow, this is pretty serious. I'm in a bad place right now.
Yeah. That moment, I'm sure was pretty scary.
Yeah.
When you finally
Yeah,
hates you.
because when you're high all the time, you'll tell yourself and the people around you, it's like you're always pumping each other up. It's cool, it's fine, it's normal, and you're not thinking in your logical brain. And at the same exact time, every once in a while, you stop and you're like, wow, this is really the path that I'm going down. And it's scary at that moment. And it's almost that all or nothing mentality that will follow us as people with addiction, you know?
Yeah, listening to you, it's like, all my friends do it, or we're just partying, we're just having a good time. It's helping me lose weight. It's all of these things are so beneficial, right? And that's the same story again, even though it was so obvious to maybe a listener or a watcher that it's like a problem. That same thing is the story played out in almost every person I talked to in one way or another. It just was more dramatic and more obvious for you. Yeah. So you get through this, right? And then finally, like, obviously, you seek help, or it was forced upon you. Yeah. So I spent 16 years in and out of treatment facilities. I think I've been to over 14 or 15 of them. And the one thing that I found every single time I got clean is that my obsessive compulsive behavior, the ability to look past that always led me back into using. So I literally I was switching seats on the Titanic. So it's like I got out of eating this, or I got out of treatment, and then I started overeating again because you're hungry and you're just seeking dopamine. And then I started, throwing up. I started just dealing with bulimia and then restricting again. And then this, and then I'd seek a prescription for Adderall, and then that would lead to, it's just always, no matter what I did, I'd always think I could like trick it. Like, oh, if I do this or if I do that, I'll be able to like manage all of this. And it just always led me into that same battle. And I actually got help for my eating disorder in one of like a dual diagnosis treatment center. And I was like, I don't have an eating disorder, like it's normal to throw up or restrict. Like these are the stories we tell ourselves are so crazy and so elaborate sometimes. And I had actually got out of treatment, and I ended up in a bad position again, and I spent another 4.5 years using, and I got in a lot of trouble. I ended up, the state of Washington said, you got 2 choices right now. This is plan A and plan B. And I got a hefty little sentence, and they sent me to drug treatment. And it was the first time, my story is rooted in God. It was the first time I had a connection with a higher power too. And I think that helped me. And I think I was able to like the same exact thing that I'm able to like implement with clients, and you implement with clients, is like we have to start with removing like the environment and understanding what is going on in the first place, because that unawareness of something we can't see, like look at what just happened, 3 years of things we can't see and how much chaos that caused to our country, is when we try to put an identity on something we can't see, we put it in a small box, and it's a big blanket. Yeah. So I love that you talked about training seats in an airplane.
Seats on the Titanic.
Oh, it's seats on the Titanic. Yeah. I like that even better, because like addiction moves. And so up to 20% of people in the United States today have some form of eating disorder, or will have some disorder, right? So it's very, very common. But when you call it an eating disorder, you limit its brevity and its power and how it can move into other things. Yeah. Meanwhile, drug addiction in the United States today, up to 10% of people will become addicted to some drug during their lifetime, right? Currently, probably 3 to 4% active. But what does active mean? Because it's a continuum, right? Yeah. And so you've got...
And normally that's non-prescription based. So you're missing everyone who's addicted to Adderall or pain pills or any of that stuff,
It's a very marginal... Right. It's just the people that have probably been to treatment. Yeah. And only 20% of people have actually gone to treatment. Right. In fact, they did a study, they were looking at alcohol, and they said of people who have had substance abuse issues, only 2% of them have ever sought help. So the number of people out there that are actually struggling with some form of addiction or eating disorder, which again, we're going to call it all addiction right now, just so that people don't get it confused. The number could be triple what we know on paper, right? Yeah. And then again, it would go to binging.
And dopamine seeking.
Restricting. Yeah. Right. Then it's back to substance use. Yeah. And when you try to remove one and it left a void, you would try to fill it with another. Yeah. Right.
Every time.
Right.
Every time.
And that behavior, though, exists in every person's life today in some fashion or another. Yeah. Because the battle with what we'll call dopamine addiction exists in all of us. It's just so obviously seen in your story, and that's what I love so much about it. Yeah. So how long did all this go on for?
It was about 16 years from start to finish.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you know, what kind of, I guess, once you finally really figured out what was going on with you,
Yeah.
like, what was that process like? What was that moment like? I mean,
Like the moment of realization.
yeah. So you went and did the treatment.
Yeah. So I had I think my biggest moment of realization of like knowing there was something else out there, because the story I had told myself, and again, we tell ourselves these stories and these situations to co-sign whatever crap, won't swear, whatever crap. Okay. Yeah. Whatever we want, we can always come up with. You and I can always write a story for whatever we want to do to justify that. Right. But I remember I was in jail and I had been in there for about 3.5 or 4 months already. And I had this dream about this little girl running to me, like across this parking lot, and me picking her up. And I was like, this is so crazy. But I woke up and my heart was pounding and I was like sweating. And I was like, this is so intense and so vivid. And I remember I'd gotten a little bit of trouble in there because it's me and I always like to joke around, believe it or not. And the only way it can get out is to go to church. And I remember I'm a believer, I'm going to church, like, let's go. And I got out and I'm sitting in there and I don't know what happened, but I literally felt like this calling of like, there's another life I'm supposed to have that's beyond what I've ever given myself. It's beyond all the crime. It's beyond all the people I thought were my friends. Cause you know how that is. This person's my blood. They're my brother. No one's there for you sometimes at those times. And I just had this like moment of like, I'm going to honestly give this like an honest shot. And to be very real, it was the hardest. I mean, I had been in really nice recovery centers and had everything handed to me when I got out. And this was a grind up from the top. I mean, Department of Correction housing, and like, it's a rough neighborhood, and like just came all the way up. But I just held on to this image that I was made on purpose for a purpose, and it was greater than I was giving myself credit for.
Yeah. So that moment that you talk about, so we can see it in the lives of anyone who finally says, I'm ready to make a change.
Yeah.
For real. We call that the gift of desperation.
Yes.
Right? Where the pain of change is less finally for the first time than the pain of remaining the same.
Yeah.
And for you just had a really high pain threshold.
Yeah.
And so it took going, that's why the soft road would have killed you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Which is why I worry so much in America today when you're dealing with, again, I'm going to extrapolate now, because we talk about this topic of eating disorder. We talk about this topic of drug addiction, and people will say, well, those are pockets. Those are small pockets of people. But really, when we talk about sugar addiction, and the many forms of, whether it's internet, whatever form of addiction out there, when you add it all up,
it's massive.
It's massive. And so what I'm getting at is that I see it, even if somebody finally look in the mirror and they're 200 pounds up and they go, holy shit, they wake up.
Yeah.
You know, same thing you said, when you were in the stall.
Oh, yeah.
In school, shooting up.
Yeah.
That same moment of awareness opens up on somebody just staring in the mirror on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
Or sitting in a car and can't, their pants don't fit the same.
And you can't give it to somebody. Like, if I saw you struggling, I couldn't give you that moment. Right. You can't give that to somebody. That's something that has to come with it from within. And it normally is at a rock bottom. It has to hurt enough to create change.
Right. Which is why when I talk to a lot of coaches like you or others, we can only make it so soft and easy and accommodating, because at the end of the day, the more that we do that, the less likely that individual is going to achieve freedom, achieve liberation from the things that deceive them, which come from inside.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the scary thing about coaching as a business, because when we look at it as a business, we're like, what can I do to make it easier and better and more improved? And all of that's true. But at the end of the day, we have to stay strong and try to push them through the hard moments, because there's no soft way to make real change.
My strength as a coach has come by being harder on my clients, in the sense of like, this is like that hard conversation and like painting truth into what is really going on in the situation, instead of small stepping around that. Because I think that change they do want to hear that, and they already know. If I'm telling you something and you're sick, you already know. I don't have to tell you that. They already know. They just need to actually hear that someone else is seeing what's actually going on.
Well, I talk about the 5 stages of change. So the first one is identification. They've identified that there's a problem.
Yeah.
Like, I'm shooting up in a bathroom.
Yeah.
Identification.
Yeah.
But accepting, right, that it is a problem and that I'm the problem and the solution, that acceptance part is, there's a big difference between identification and acceptance.
Yeah.
Right. And then even after you accept it, will you remove it?
So that's the biggest thing too, is I think people think it needs to be shooting up in the bathroom when it can really be like, can I eat a meal without tracking it? It's just that inability to have change in general. It's all of the little stuff along the way.
Right. And so coming back to the listeners, when we look at 70% today, or 60 to 70%, depending what state you live in, is overweight or obese. 20% of Americans have some form of sugar addiction in the studies. When you look at all the animal studies and human studies that show that sugar has a stronger dopaminergic effect on the brain than cocaine, right? We see that.
I see that in the frontal left lobe, like on
right,
skin.
the activity. So when we know sugar really as an addictive drug is stronger than any of the street drugs.
Yeah.
And so now you have, if 60 or 70% of Americans are overweight or obese, at least 20% of Americans that we know of will have some form of eating disorder.
Yes.
And 10 to 15% of Americans will have some form of drug addiction. When you do the math, that means everyone listening at some point will battle their version of addiction.
Yeah.
And because we give it a name, Sonia eating disorder, Sonia addict, methamphetamine, alcoholic, internet addiction, right? Food addiction, obesity, severe obesity typically.
Yeah.
Not everyone overweight has an addiction, but the point is that because we classify it by a name, we box it, and we refuse to recognize is that at the core of it, it is the same fundamental condition.
Yes.
And because of that, we're losing ground on the addiction front.
Yes.
And that people at home can't see themselves because we give it different names. When you're struggling with consistency, when you're struggling with putting down the alcohol because you don't want on weekends, right? You don't want to give it up. When you're struggling with putting down different foods or get rid of codependent relationships, trying not to isolate and receive fellowship, all of these different things are in some form an addiction. And so because of that, people think this isn't that big of a deal because we don't talk about it in the broader picture, right? But through your story, I think it's easier for people to see, many of these things are really the same thing, showing up in different ways. And if I take almost an addiction model approach to it, or a stronger step of action through simple steps,
100%,
I could achieve a greater freedom and liberation, right?
Yeah. And I see that in my clients. I'm sure you see that in your clients when there starts to be an awareness to an actual issue. It's like, well, why can't we do a week without a drink? Like, what is going on? They start to look in more. A lot of them will have that realization of wow, we really need to take a step away from this. And then normally we start to see the awareness in every part of their life. They're being more aware of relationships, boundaries, all of it across the board.
Yeah. And that's why I think today more than ever, the world needs coaching, right? Because a lot of these people don't need to go to jail and a rehab, which is great news.
Yes.
Because we're more fortunate today.
Yes.
Because there are other solutions than to completely destroying your life.
Yeah.
Which is great. But what we see in the rates of people getting sick from chronic disease today, people are ruining their lives. It's just a death by 1,000 cuts, which I might argue is even worse. My life had
products, tannings lotion, hair salon. As women, we're just exposing ourselves to it all day long. Yeah.
So I'm so glad we got to have this conversation because sugar addiction is very real. Now, the average American has 19 teaspoons a day of added sugar, which is processed sugar, right? And that is so much more of an effect than, let's just say, natural sugar from fruit.
Yeah.
So I don't think carbs are bad. I don't want to create that narrative, and I don't want to create the narrative that fruit's bad, because you hear that.
Yeah.
Right? You hear that out there. Playing on that. None of that's real. But when we start adding all of this sugar and eating all of this processed foods, even if it says healthy on the front of it, and then maybe we're on a million different stimulants and we're going to the gym 6 times a week, and we're not eating food, that's the same thing at its base level.
Disordered eating.
Right. At its same level as someone who's using a substance to get by in life.
Yeah.
Right. And we need to call it what it is so we can deal with it effectively.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to make this story all bad. There's a huge underpinning to this, or
I made it here, so
right.
Things worked out.
Right. So okay. And then here's the next layer of your story is like you get through some of we'll talk about the psychological addiction components.
Yeah.
Right. And to then recover from that and begin a whole nother journey of physiologic disease.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of your body, so we get, that's why I love your story so much. It's like you liberate yourself because it'll feel this way. It's like, and I hope listeners at home, it's like, I'll get past this one thing, right?
Oh.
Just something else to come through and challenge me again.
Yeah.
Challenge me again.
It's almost funny at this point.
Yeah. But I love, having clients like you and talking about these stories because it's the never quit attitude.
Yeah.
That you overcome the ED, you overcome the drug abuse, and then you try to move on with your life. You have a child at this time.
Yeah. So I had actually gotten pregnant about 6 months after I got out.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
right into motherhood. It's like
they said don't have a relationship for a year, so I had a baby. But it was interesting though because in treatment, it's endless amounts of food.
I'm gonna. So we share this in common because we've both been through treatment. They tell you never to get in a relationship within a year, and I've never met one member
or a bunch of codependent people.
One member that's ever listened to that, but yet still millions of people have recovered. So point being, you don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
To still achieve liberation and freedom.
Stepping forward.
Yeah. You don't have to be perfect.
Keep moving.
To achieve, right?
When I was in treatment, I turned to food again, right? Because you're looking for anything to curb that dopamine, and it was holiday season, and they give you seconds and like all sorts of stuff. So I got thick, And when I got out, I was like, oh great, now I have my vices again. I can restrict, I can exercise, I'm kind of free. And so that's like, I had gained a significant amount of weight, like 20 pounds in treatment, which is, you're in there for 3 months. That's a lot to put on in a short time, And then I had gone, and because I was still using in jail, but when I got to treatment, I had said like, no. So instantly went to food. And when I got out, I instantly started doing HIIT-based training to lose the weight and restricting. And I picked up a meal plan I got online.
That's right.
How to lose weight, it was like
bodybuilding.com.
Almonds, and you've done 6 almonds before.
Ask Ajib.
Yeah. It was just straight into that and massive amounts of HIIT cardio and training.
And high intensity training.
Orange Theory had just gotten to Seattle, and I was like, there that is. I had, and it was on.
You could pretty much probably just take half the people off the treadmill at Orange Theory and have them eating.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't know, right? That, like, it's another addiction, right?
Yeah.
Not that I don't love the people in Orange Theory. Don't take that the wrong way. But the point is, then that's something we have to acknowledge. Anybody in the weight loss field or medical health, like coaching, has to understand that the people that are drawn to us most likely, there's been some evidence-based information that would suggest in studies and observation studies that suggest 70% of people who would buy coaching or get into medical weight loss or anything like that have had some form of body dysmorphia or ED behavior. And so when I see the fitness industry and the medical weight loss industry throwing around information that is only a half truth, I can tell what they're doing is preying on addiction.
Yes.
And it disgusts me because maybe they don't know they're doing it. Maybe they're just trying to be effective at marketing.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, if I touch this button, they'll do what I want. But what they're really doing is preying on a population of people that need better support than that.
Gets me a little bit heated at times because I do feel like it's a predator move in a sense because people are looking for help and hope and you're really giving them more of a problem.
Yeah. You're just giving them a different ticket.
You don't really have this solution, but you're telling them and they're so full of hope to find anything to succeed. We see this in our field in functional coaches. And you're like, you shouldn't be taking on, you shouldn't be promising that. And people are so anxious and because they believe that there's this easy ticket and it's not easy, and we're selling an easy dream to a complicated problem.
Yeah. And so I see so many people, they lose their way in life. A bad relationship, right?
Yeah.
Drugs, food, whatever. They lose their way. They don't know where to go. They don't like themselves. So what do they find first? The gym. 100%, right? And then
just with recovery alone, addicts love the gym. I mean, it's like I get clean and I go to the gym.
Right. And what are they going to meet though? They're going to meet a whole lot of people trying to tell them how to live their life. but that whatever that information is comes with a skew about how it's going to benefit that individual.
Yeah.
So it's different than in my opinion, in recovery, when you walk into the doors of the AA for the first time or any addiction 12-step program, those people are there doing it voluntarily, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then you walk into the gym, and so then I see all these people with addictive behaviors being led down the wrong path. So all they really did is like, here's a life raft. But all they're doing is moving them from the front of the Titanic to the back of the Titanic, because they're trading it out with HIIT cardio, 7 days a week training. They're restricting control behavior.
Yeah.
Get all you gotta do is keep cutting all the time, and the fat burners, this and all the stuff, right? The drugs, the steroids. That was my story.
Yeah.
I traded substances on the street for steroids.
You'll see people clinging to that too, I think, in moments of high stress in their life. They have this high stress job, they're executives at Amazon, and they find this first thing in the morning, they get this rush of adrenaline and dopamine driven and all this stuff. And then that's it. They're going every single day and they're just crushing themselves.
Right. And so when we look at all that, we can see it for what it is now. Now, a lot of people are going to get mad because they're going to look at that and go,
we don't care.
Right.
We don't care.
I want you to be free. You can be mad as you want, but it's the truth, right? And so anyway, that cycle of unhealthy, the cycle of addiction, right? And you see in people's histories, like stories like yours of severe metabolic disorder, that they'll go to 17 different people, but nobody addressed the addictive behavior.
Yeah.
Nobody talked about what's going on inside, right? Where are you really at, right? What guides some of the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Because that's too hard. That's too messy. I don't want to get into that. However, if you really want to heal somebody or you really want to bring out somebody's potential, you can't just deal with what they're putting in their mouth.
Yeah, it's behavior change in general across the board.
Right. That's not a real solution. So when I see somebody say, here's a pill, or here's a diet plan, or here's a workout plan, and they act like they're the source for how to help somebody, and they have an incomplete answer, for me, that's a false idol. You know what I mean? That's somebody, and I'm not saying that people can't work in their particular field, but I watch a lot of people out there try to suggest that they have all the answers, like medical weight loss really upsets me, right? That I'm going to solve all of your problems, right, with this one pill.
Yeah.
Right. And you really haven't even addressed why they gained the weight in the first place.
Yeah.
America loses the most weight per capita out of any country, first world country in the world, but then we also gain the most weight.
Yeah.
It's an addiction. The whole country's in an addictive cycle.
Yeah.
And none of us can see it because we're all running around giving it different names.
Yeah.
Right. And so you finally overcome that and you gain this weight, right? When the drugs are gone, bring on the sex and the food, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Hence the baby.
I mean, let's be honest, like facts, right?
Yeah.
So okay. And then you go to, so then you have your...
So I have my daughter and I'm training the whole time I'm with my daughter.
Okay.
And to be honest, my eating during that time, I was like, Quest bars are really big. Quest bars, that was it was their moment. It was their time to shine. So it was like a Quest bar and like a smoothie every day for lunch and like maybe an apple and some almonds. Like I ate really clean during my pregnancy. But after I had my daughter, I thought, okay, now I can really take the throttle off.
Yeah.
And trying to diet after you're having a baby is like the worst thing that you could possibly do for yourself, for your kid, everything. And so I kind of like held back a little bit, but then as soon as it was 6 months over and I was like, okay, she breastfed for 6 months, because my milk supply, dieting that hard and doing that much cardio was like,
reduced.
It was just, an hour to get like that much, And so then I started really trying to like overtrain. And in fact, I started teaching cycle. And because I was like, this will help. 5 hours of cardio, you have to lose weight. And I like got stuck at like this kind of like mid mark, but my body wasn't changing and I wasn't eating enough. And I was eating 25 grams of fat a day. And I was literally doing 5 hours of cardio a day. And cycle, like you're on the mic and like, you're really getting after it, like soul cycle, and my hair started falling out. I was cold all the time. I couldn't sleep. I didn't have my period. I didn't have my period for almost, 6 years, basically. Yeah. A couple months before we started working together, I finally got it back. And my sex drive was just, my mood, everything was just like as low as it could be. And I was like skinny fat, when you have no muscle, but you don't also look good. And I was completely stuck. And so I heard this podcast and they were talking about macros. And so as an addict, I'm like, this is it. Okay, this is the one.
This is the answer.
This is the one.
Listen, I found the solution.
Finally found out, and I did a reverse diet for 6 months, and I had actually like started to like love carbs. And if you know anything about macros, my carbs got up to 200 because at the time it was hashtag 200 club, and now we blow it away at 400. It's like 200 was so much food, and I felt great. So then, addicts live in these like 6 to 3 month periods, and so I went, okay, what's the next thing? I'm comfortable here, and I tracked every single day of that 6 months, and I went straight into a prep. I thought, okay, I can prep now because I was starting to look like a bodybuilder, and so I wanted a little bit more, and went straight into a 9-month prep.
What's a little bit more?
What's a little bit more?
One is too many, and 1,000 is never.
And I had no period, and so and everything was anti-estrogen at this time. So I thought this is going to work to my advantage.
Which that's another episode we could talk all about anti-estrogens being one of the deaths of bodybuilders, one, but also destroying female metabolisms.
Oh yeah,
because when we look at everything from anti-estrogens to depo to birth controls that bring your
the suppression,
estrogen to zero, that stimulate that menopause, and then because of erratic dieting behavior, cranking estrogen, shutting it off, cranking it, shutting it off is a big reason women have the issues they have today.
Absolutely,
that's one of the contributing factors to your
Marina with the HIIT training, I believe, was the actual the perfect storm that they put together, and they couldn't get my period back. So I thought this is the perfect situation to start bikini prep.
Yeah, of course.
More.
Yeah, that's right.
Just bring on the more.
Right. And so just to speed this thing along a little bit, how did that, you go through prep?
I go through prep, did great, 6% body fat, super lean, came out, wasn't going to the bathroom, never had a period, never asked. Every time I brought it up, it was like always kind of like just eat more fiber. So coming out of prep and carbs started going up, I had a really hard time controlling food. I was actually going through a divorce, and I would find myself having massive binge episodes, and I had gut dysfunction, like a lot of people do from high stress, and the combination just gave me full-blown SIBO.
So was that the divorce? Was that the person that you met within that year that you weren't supposed to be dating?
Yeah. Yep. So we were together for about 6 or 7 years. Yeah. So it's like the end of an era, like so much going on, and now I'm this bikini competitor, and like all these like this situation, and then can we say the virus? Okay, I don't know. They block it. Okay, so COVID happened and everything shut down. So I am 2 months out of prep, freshly divorced, and I am in my house alone with food all the time. And it was, you couldn't see, this was when people were like scarves and stuff. And it completely I was just like restricting myself, and I'd overeat, then I'd do 3 hours of cardio again, and then overeat, and then I couldn't control it. So I was right back in my eating disorder. And so from there, I started, obviously, with SIBO, I started working with a coach who had training in gut.
Stop there. So obviously, we're now held up in the house.
Yeah.
For a different reason. Before it was like massive drug use.
Yeah.
Not leaving the house. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
Looking out the windows.
Yeah.
And then now we're in the house locked up because of COVID.
Yeah.
Right? And we're eating a lot. And then your gut started to just get out of control, right? So you got something called SIBO, right? Which we talked about on the podcast before, but that's bacterial overgrowth. Technically in the small intestine is where they're localizing it.
Yeah.
And so now the symptoms are extreme bloating, pain, right? Fatigue.
Looking like I was pregnant, and inflammation.
Constant pregnant though.
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
It's not like the bloating went down when you went to bed.
Yeah. Striations and delts and glutes and just hard, painful belly. Yeah.
Okay.
So at this time I was also on full hormone replacement therapy because I'd never gotten my period back after having my daughter. So their solution was no one had ever asked me how much cardio I was doing or how much I was eating. Not once. So they did
detail.
Full-blown estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And I had actually, my gut started healing, and my HRT doctor said, well, let's move you on to more testosterone.
Of course, because more
is better.
So isn't it interesting how the same theory that we come up with, this simple,
mind-blowing,
dysfunctional thought process that we have in drug addiction is the same answer that a lot of medical professionals have or coaches have?
Yeah.
It's like, listen, if one Tylenol wasn't doing it, then 16 should be great.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my levels were I've run labs for men too, and I was like, they're about equal. I mean, we're talking about 300s, very, very high. And I talked. They've installed me. You knew what was going on, and I didn't want to listen. I was like,
I know, I told you. So this is where kind of come into full circle. I had become a member with a group of coaches called the PEC, some great coaches over there. And that's where I met you at my conferences.
Yep.
And got to know your story a little bit, got to know you a little bit. And then there was about a year time where I told you, I was like, I kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
And if you keep adding more hormones, trying to do refeeds, this, that, and the other, and then back into a cardio, that you're just going to have more problems.
Yeah.
Right. And you weren't ready to hear that yet.
No.
Right. Just like
it meant stopping.
Yeah.
But if you would have told me to add more of any substance in, I would have added more in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I knew that. And again, coming from my addiction background, coming from my steps of recovery, there are hundreds of people that I have met, thousands really, that like, I know when I talk to them for the first time that, okay, this is the first chapter of our story, but I'm going to see them again.
Yeah.
When they're ready.
Yeah.
Right. When the gift of desperation should arrive on their doorstep.
Yeah.
I will be ready for them. And so what I want to tell a lot of coaches out there or practitioners is like, don't forget that a lot of times the first time a person hears the message, they may say no, but that message is going to stay with them.
Yeah.
So when I talk to people, I realize that I'm talking to a human being that I may see in 6 months or a year or 2 years. And so I don't let the importance of that in the moment fall beneath me. Yeah. So what I do is I realize that I'm going to plant a seed, and then that seed's going to grow, and whether it's with me or not, that's my primary job. If you sign up with me or you come to my programs or you find any of the things that I have out there to help you heal, that's great. But the reality is I just know that at some point that seed's going to come to fruition.
Right.
And so I just need to plant it. And so a lot of coaches that are getting started in the functional space trying to preach these messages, they may feel that it's falling on deaf ears. It's not. I can tell you now, after being a coach for over 15 years, I mean, probably a good 15 to 20% of those people at some point over the course of 5 years have come back to me.
Yeah.
And you just got to stick around long enough to see that.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is that we can have an idea of what's going on. Like what you said when we had first talked made sense to me, but I thought I could figure it out, because you think that it's putting a square in a square, but there's a difference between having awareness of like hormone insensitivities and stuff like that, but not knowing, but then what do you do about it?
Okay. So I don't want to make the whole podcast about this, but we come to understand nutrition dynamic. We kind of discovered this condition with our medical team and a lot of our coaches called OID, overactive immune disorder. I haven't talked a lot on the podcast about it. I've talked a little bit about it. But what happened is through her addictive behavior and through the things that happened to her body, it overstimulated her immune system. And it shows up in different ways. It came in, well, one, it was kind of always there a little bit in the background genetically.
Yeah.
Your mother seems to have some of these overtones too. And it usually ends up in the second or third generation causing slower metabolisms from birth.
Yeah.
Right. Which you always had a little bit of trouble with.
C-section. Yeah.
Right, all that.
Yeah.
And so all this overstimulation of the immune system led to an overactivity and created a cellular inflammation that people did not readily identify. And so then what was happening is that everyone was just trying to add more hormones, more thyroid medication, right? More diet restriction, more training, because they were trying to diet and hormone over a cellular mitochondrial issue that was being disrupted by the immune system.
When you look back at even my childhood, I had things like eczema and impetigo, like UTI, like things that were like chronic ear infections and strep throat all the time. I had these massive red flags that were like, there's an immune issue going on, but we never see it or identify it then.
Well, they say that women with eating disorders have a 2 to 5 fold greater chance of getting an autoimmune disorder. So that's why I'm trying to get people to understand is that if you have addictive behavior, it is very likely that you will recruit your immune system and cause metabolic dysfunction over time. And it's not just a matter of how well I can diet or work out.
Yeah.
So let's bring this home.
Yeah.
When we finally decided to work together.
Yeah.
What was your weight? Where were you at?
181. And it had been I had been working with amazing coaches, and everyone gave it their best shot, but it's like it wasn't the root. And every time we tried to do one thing, like address the gut, address stress, address this, it's like the immune system is like that thing that we can't test as well. We don't test the immune system that well, Well,
it's because you have 3 forms of immunity: barrier, and then your innate and adaptive.
Yeah.
The adaptive immune system, which is what causes most people's phantom issues.
Yeah.
Depending on what research you read, only up to like 3 to 20% of the adaptive immune system is in your bloodstream.
Yeah.
So that it's tissue specific. So when you try to run blood work and you look at labs, you don't get to see how it's spread and where it's at in the body. That's why it shows up in so many different ways, and you have to track it in different ways, which is what we discovered over time in nutrition dynamic. And so, here you are, 181. How else are you feeling? Yeah.
So hopeless.
Pumped full of hormones. Okay.
Pumped full of hormones.
Hormone max. Thyroid medicine.
I was on T3. I was on T4. I was on estrogen patches. I was on progesterone. I was on testosterone at 32. So it's like
32. Literally,
like I'm taking a prescription for everything that should be made normally in my body, and it's like I just can't figure out what's going on. I'm on fasting days, my insulin, my fasted blood glucose is stuff. Like we couldn't. So no one can give me a logical answer.
Right. So the problem is that while I love hormone replacement therapy for age-related decline of hormones, nothing wrong with that. We have a medical company called Advanced Vitality that we handle that. That's great. The problem is that when we think that the symptom is the diagnosis, this again becomes the problem. Same thing coming back to addiction. It's like eating disorder. Oh, my problem is food.
Yeah.
No. Again, the symptom and the diagnosis are not the same things. Oftentimes, the thing that you can see is not not the root.
Right.
Right. So even though you give a diagnosis, like you could say, low testosterone, right? To give a prescription for that, right? Or whatever, endocrine disorder, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Or Hashimoto's, right? The reality is that there's something that's probably caused that's actually the root. And if we don't deal with that,
right,
we're gonna stay in a disease state regardless of adding hormone or not.
Yeah.
And so in your case, we have cellular inflammation, and when you just add a hormone on top of cellular inflammation, all you get is a watery mess.
I was watery. I mean, like my whole face was swollen. Like I was just looking at pictures of my family that I'm visiting this weekend, and I was showing them. I was like, just to recall those pictures that I would take every single day. It's just like, it looked like I had just massive, like I was fighting off massive inflammation, hair falling out all the time, eyes swollen, like just a wreck. Gaining, not like a little bit, but like in like 4 weeks, 4 pounds in a week, and eating. I mean, like I'd be like, did I measure this wrong? Like eating on point. And as a coach, like every day was tracked. I was on point, and I just kept gaining and gaining and gaining, and it just didn't make sense.
Yeah. And so the first thing that I told you was that we're taking and you'd worked a couple years gaining the information of how hormone replacement therapy is a good thing.
Yeah.
And you had low hormone, so in your mind, it made sense. Low hormone, here's hormones together. Very logical.
I can't lose weight without estrogen, so I have to take estrogen. I can't lose weight without... It was all about losing weight, right? Because my mindset wasn't healing, it was weight loss.
Yeah. And the first thing I said, all right, when you come on board, we're taking it all out.
I know.
All of it. Ripping all that out.
A little bit scared.
Yeah, right. And I said,
this is lost his fucking mind.
That's right.
Yeah.
That does sound like I have when I tell you that.
Yeah.
So for anybody, I mean, when people come into our program or whatever, or a functional program, we ask you to remove all these things.
Yeah.
It is a scary leap of faith, right? But cue the amazing transformation right here. Here we go. Producer Keone, look at her amazing transformation. We've lost over what?
30 pounds, 30 pounds. Yeah.
And what is it, 3 or 4 months now?
It's about 5 months.
Getting 5 months as of today.
Regular periods.
Regular period.
Hormones are really in a good spot. Yeah.
So vitality, sex drive,
it's all good. Okay. It's literally like, I was just saying this the other day, it's the best I can remember feeling ever, really. Because I don't have any substances. My body feels good. I just feel good. Like I feel like a person again,
Yeah. And so we put her through our OID program. And obviously, there are many stages to it to de-escalate the immune system. And you trusted me the whole time.
Yeah.
I've asked you to do a lot. We can't cover everything that we do in the program right now. But basically, when we go to, part of the program is fasting some protein, okay? And when you pull foods that you've been eating a lot of, you face all the addictions all over again. The thoughts, like craving to go, get your dopamine somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you stayed in the pocket, and you've kind of gotten over the tough part of that.
Yeah.
And what I've found, and maybe you can elaborate on this, is that today I can tell, talking to you, you're a different person. Your energy levels, like you're already high energy, but you were like anxiety, nervous, all over the place, like squirrel, right?
Yeah.
And today though, I went with full conversation, your vibe, your energy, it's always been good.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm talking to a different person.
Yeah. I've noticed that even in my approach to like, in like check-ins, for example, or like emails, or like, I was just kind of talking to my boyfriend about it, like in the trip, it's like, I just feel like I'm like much more like go with the flow now than I've ever been. And like, don't have that like anxious, like even if something changes, for example, if, you know, maybe I don't get exactly the meal that I was supposed to get and something, life happens. I don't spend all night thinking about it and talking about it. Like I literally was talking about being sick every single day, everywhere we went. Let me tell you about my mystery illness. It was odd.
It almost speaks it into reality more, right? You almost manifest it.
Yeah.
And I remember when we first started, and what people should know about anxiety is some of it is psychologic and some of it's physiologic.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to sort the proportion of which. And with her, I could tell a good portion of it was physiologic. And so at first, when we start working together and she was nervous, it would be like, what about this? And what about that? What about, and this, and that, and this. And I was like trying to tell you that I can answer the question, but it won't solve the problem you're actually trying to solve, which is calming your inner self.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like,
my inner child needed a hug. It was a little bit worked up.
and when I tell people that, they get so mad at me. They're like, fuck you, bro. They're like, I'm just trying to ask a question.
Some like tough love along the way, but like I heard it, you know, and it was like, and my boyfriend would be like, there was a couple of times
he's over there grinning.
He was like, all right, that's true. Yeah, no, dude, you know, like,
So I'll tell people that all the time. People, that inner nervousness and fear and lack of control leads you to asking a lot more questions.
Yeah.
Because you think that more information will lead to more security.
Yes.
But all it does is lead to more questions.
Yeah. I've always needed to know what exactly was next. And I enjoy knowing what's next. But for the most part, I'm like, it's funny because the other day my boyfriend was asking me, he's like, well, what do you think will happen next? I'm like, I don't know. It's up to Vince. We got that's whatever. And you know what I mean? I was like, it's on him now, you know? I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. But talking to her today, she looks incredible. You look amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
And just her story, I just hope people hung on this long, because at the end, there's the miracle at the end where it's like, hopefully you can see yourself in Sonia, and then you can look inside of yourself and see the areas where in smaller forms, addiction may be present and the cycle of addiction may be present. And that you can start to look at that. And then once you can actually identify it, you can do something about it. So Sonia, thank you for being so brave and being here today.
Yeah.
Thank you for riding this thing out with me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm so excited for what the future holds for you.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for everyone checking this out and listening, and we'll check you back on another podcast.